Doing photography shoots in your own home can be quite cumbersome because first of all, you need to move the furniture out of the way. Then you're gonna hope for some good natural light. There are so many variables to consider and so many variables that can go utterly wrong. And so I decided to rent a studio. So that was my first ever rental studio. And I want to share my initial or my first experience in doing that. I did learn quite a few things, and I've also gotten quite a few things completely and utterly wrong. So let's talk about this first experience. We'll talk about the prices. We'll talk about how to go about searching for that studio, where you can actually find it, and yeah, things to look out for. So let's talk about it. So the first section of this video is how to go about finding that studio. Where do you find it? How do you find it? What do you do? Let's talk about it. So the most obvious place to look for was Instagram. I typed in studio in search, then photography studio. And yeah, the options are definitely there, but they're all over the show. Different locations, different prices. Everything is just so varied. The looks, the setups. I would have to spend hours to try and analyze all these listings and find what I'm looking for. So Instagram, even though that was the most obvious option, it just wasn't easy. So I decided to go to Google. So this is where I typed in photography studios. And boom! Peerspace and Scouty are the sponsored ads and they came right up top. I went with Scouty for some odd reason. When we go to the actual website, for type, I entered photography. For location, London, UK. So let's say you went through all that list, you can actually create a list where you can save down the locations that you really did like or the studios that you liked. And then when you're happy with your choice, you just send off a booking request and wait for confirmation. It does tell you that the studio owner or caretaker will come back to you within 72 hours. But in my experience, usually they do come back to you very quickly in like a couple of hours. So in my first ever search, I was going obviously for the more cheap options. And I was actually looking for something around the 20 quid per hour mark. And I did find a few, not many. There were about 10, 15 odd studios for that price per hour. But I was just so excited because this was my first studio and I wanted a location that's not too far away from central London. So I saw this studio here. It looked, yeah, okay. I had a look on the map. It didn't seem too far from the center, but I didn't bother looking closely. Also, what I found with this listing is that the minimum booking was for 4 hours. So I had a look around at other bookings and I could see that, yeah, the 4 hours was the norm. Actually, I could see many that said 8 hours minimum. And I pulled the trigger. I booked or sent out a request for a 4-hour minimum booking for that particular studio. Within a couple of hours, I got a reply. This was a Sunday that I was booking for, so basically, you know, the weekend, the deep weekend in the middle of the day. And yep, the booking request was approved. But to be fair, 4 hours is overkill because it was basically myself and a model. That's it. So we really didn't need that much time, but I thought, hey, it's not going to turn out too expensive, so let's just go and do this. Boy, did I face a surprise when we started driving up to this location. To say the location was underwhelming is to say nothing at all. But if the drive up was not amazing, we did actually get a secure parking space, and that's good, I suppose. And then we went inside. The setup was rough around the edges, to say the least. Equipment, though, was plentiful, with soft boxes, beauty dishes, bones reflectors and converters. We had access to 60-watt Godox LEDs, umbrellas, you name it. There was a kettle, a fresh carton of milk, and even coffee pots, a dressing table, clothes rack, and a changing space. Equipment-wise, no issues. Hospitality was also great, but the location was not. To be quite frank, that whole studio was a bit underwhelming as well. I did expect slightly more. Considering I did read the comments under that studio, I thought it's going to be something a bit more chic or a bit more, just, I don't know, user-friendly. But it was okay. Considering we did have blackout there, I thought, let's go for this very dark, maybe a bit of a dramatic theme to it. And we tried that. But again, we didn't spend 4 hours there, we spent around 90 minutes in there. So the model did use the changing room, she did use the clothes rack, so everything was sort of okay. But it was cold, because that place just wasn't heated. So there were issues, let's say that. I will actually show you some of the sample photos of that shoot that we took, and I actually took those photos with my Canon RP as well as the Samyang f1.4 85mm lens. So yeah, some of these shots were actually really good because again, we did have the lights, we had the setup, everything was generally okay in terms of the studio space and the studio equipment. But what did I learn from this experience of renting out my first studio? What are the key takeaways? Well, first of all, you do need to go and take a closer look at the location of this studio. So go to Google, for example, and actually do a walk around in that location. Go up and down the street. Do you actually like that place? Do you like that area? Do you think it's a safe area? And doesn't warrant the price that you're going to be paying for that studio. So I didn't do that in that first instance, as you can see, because if I saw this location, I can't say I wouldn't go, but, it would put me off slightly. Another thing is, if you do see the minimum booking for, let's say, 4 hours, do your research, because after the initial studio, I did more and more research, looking at more and more listings of these studios. I found that 2 hours was the norm. It's just that I was so excited about the first studio that I potentially overlooked telltale signs that maybe 4 hours is just too much, and I was looking at the wrong listings. There were plenty, even for the 20 quid or 20 pounds per hour, and the minimum bookings could be found at 2 hours. So again, I was too trigger happy. So take a good look around and don't get caught on these. If you take a minimum booking of 4 hours, you're going to get 10% discount or 5% discount or even 20% discount. It usually doesn't make much sense. And also I'm thinking now, if that studio does offer a minimum booking of 4 hours or 8 hours, is that potentially because they're not getting many clients in there and they just want you to spend a bit more money? Because if a studio is used quite often, there wouldn't be any issues with somebody taking out 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or however many. But anyway, that's just an afterthought. Another thing that I didn't do at my first or the initial booking of renting out a studio, I didn't actually message the contact of the studio. Because before you actually book, you have the option of sending a message, just saying hi, and having a conversation with the person looking after that studio. It does help. It helps you build the rapport, just to maybe get the right expectations out there, what you expect from the studio, and hopefully have that discussion that's going to help you decide if you want to take that location and if you want to take your model to that location or even yourself there. The moral of this story is that a lot of lessons were learned from that initial session, initial studio rental. Now, I don't regret it. I still think it was a great experience. Like I showed you, we had some really good shots taken there, some really good photos. I liked the setup, but the way I went about the analysis and the research of that location, of that studio, was probably incorrect. I was focusing on the wrong things. So it shouldn't be just about the price. It shouldn't be about the number of hours there. It should be about finding the right fit for your theme, for the photo shoot you want to do, for the right location, and of course, good rapport with the contact of the studio. Anyways, I do hope that you found this video useful and it will help you get your search of your studio right first time. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.